right. Hi, everybody. David Fogel back with you, CEO of the Symphonina Foundation, back with another Symphonina Foundation podcast. I've got pianist extraordinaire Ian Gindes with me. Ian, how are you?
How you doing, David? Doing well.
I'm doing very well, but, not as well as when I listened to your Rachmaninoff album a year and a bit ago, because first of all, as you know, I'm a pianist. I started playing when I was 5. That makes 56 years of playing. And my second classical teacher, Don Eclitsum, who passed away last year, was a big fan of Rachmaninoff. Her two favorites were
Wow.
Bach and Rachmaninoff. So I always had an ear for Rachmaninoff, even though I can't really play it myself. It's beyond
Sure.
me. I do my best as a classical and jazz pianist, but that's beyond me. So when I listen to people who are at your caliber, and I can just sit back and marvel and know kind of what it is that you're doing and have an appreciation for how difficult and challenging it is. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate you. And I have a question for you, which is, how did you get to be so good?
I would say, a lot of humility, I think. It's just, it's funny because once you get to a certain range too, you still have doubts and insecurities. You're like, wow, do I play well? And then some days you're like, wow, I really do play well. And then other days you're kind of, I think it's just always critiquing and making sure to get better. And one of the things I've always been taught is when you stop learning, your music starts to suffer. Because the thing is that it's an ongoing process. Your music is not going to be, perfect. It never is going to be. That's not what it's supposed to be anyway, but you can always improve and make things better. So,
Well, on that process of continual improvement, where did you get started on that process? Were you starting at 5 like I did, very young, or how did it go
yeah,
for
I
you?
was, yeah, I was about, my dad would argue I was 4, but of course, I don't remember all the way back then. And we started doing private lessons I think I was 7. I started at about 7 years old.
Hmm.
And then I was doing Chopin waltzes, I was really, really good at Chopin and really feeling the waltzes and being able to interpret those at a very young age. And then I would play Ravel and all those and just kept going with it. And then until I got into college, I really thought, okay, now I'm going to take this seriously and really start really buckling down and continuing to learn repertoire.
You went to a few different colleges for your bachelor's, master's, and I guess it's a DMA degree, right? The doctoral music
Mhm.
degree. Tell
Yep.
us about your experience at each one of those and how they prepared you for the next step.
So I was at Humboldt State University for my bachelor's. I studied with my teacher. Her name was Deborah Klaskin. She actually worked with Menachem Pressler at Indiana at Bloomington, and she worked with him for a while. And then I worked with her for a couple of years in just doing my bachelor's. And then in conjunction with that, I was actually going back to my older piano teacher, Bonnie Farrar. And she was actually a Rosanna Levine student. For those listeners who don't know, Rosanna Levine actually taught Van Cliburn. I worked with her for time. So it was Deborah Klaskin and Bonnie. And then I went in to get my master's, and I actually started working with another pianist who actually was another Rosanna Levine student for my master's, and then ended up doing my doctorate with Ian Hobson. And Ian Hobson was my last teacher, and I studied with him for about a decade, 10 years. So.
What did you pick up along the way that helped you either in performance or technique? I think there's two different things I wanted to bring up there. It's a
Sure.
little tip I gave to Christopher Siu for his students too on orchestration, which is think about not just how your music sounds, but how it looks to the audience, or how does it perform in that sense. So, what are the things that you picked up, not just in terms of technique that could help another piano player in their path, but
Mhm.
also how they appear to the audience as they're playing?
Oh, just kind of like their persona and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah.
And how did I work on that type
Yeah.
of thing
Yeah, because that's
specifically?
its own thing.
Oh, it
I mean,
is. It
for
is.
me, when I was playing jazz piano, the catamaran, not so much. But for you, when you're on stage and you've got 1,000 people, 2,000 people looking at you, it's not just about the music; it's about you performing it. So there's an art to that.
Well, that was rule number one. The rule number one is you never stop. So even if you make a mistake, you never stop. You just keep going. Because and I'm still struggling with this. I'm like, wow, I really made a mess out of this. And then people will come back like, that was the most wonderful performance I've ever heard. I'm like, did you hear like at bar what I had a totally terrible slip there? and they don't hear that. So the first thing is you don't stop. You just keep going. If you have to learn how to improvise in between, sections, then learn how to do that. I learned how to basically, if I did get into trouble, I knew how to improvise my way out of it. The other thing is that when you're going on stage, yeah, we worked it out to the T. It was funny because so being a concert pianist is, I believe, theater as well. So the way that you walk out to the stage, if you walk out, with your head down and you're basically looking like, wow, this is the worst thing I've ever done, the audience is going to pick up on that, right? So the thing is that you have to have a confident, even if you don't feel confident, you have to carry yourself as confident. And then when you get up there, it does reach the audience. They do feel it. They're like, wow, this person knows what they're doing, as opposed to, in contrast, somebody who has their head down and they're just very reluctant or, to get up there. And then, when I think the playing of the piano and bringing out colors in the piano and really getting to live in the moment is and that's very difficult, and being kind of to find that balance where the moment is at when you're performing, because most of the best ideas come when you basically are in the moment. You're really hearing it, and that's I think where the magic starts to happen, and just for other pianists out there that are doing this and starting off, yeah, just go see a lot of really good pianists and how they carry themselves on stage. Try to I won't say mimic, but see how they do it, and then you'll find your own way of doing that and expressing yourself that way. But yeah, again, it is theater, so it's not only just playing technically well what you're doing, it's exuding the confidence. And even though you don't feel confident, you have to exude that. So
And I guess part of that comes from having that confidence in the technical material where you're not focusing on what that is. That's not occupying 100% of your brain power.
sure.
It's only the 40%, and then the other 60% can go, how do I look?
It's true. It's true. Well, even if you have like a section, so when I'm playing and I'm so they kind of, I guess when you're in sports, it's kind of you're in the zone, right? So you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm in the zone, everything's going well. Generally speaking, when that's happening, I'm not thinking about how I'm counting, or I'm not thinking about how I want to do this. I'm just hearing it, and I'm letting my hands do what they do and really staying in that moment. And over the course of my life, I think that happens where you just really nail it. You're like basically at about 95% there. Most of the time, you're generally going to be about 80, 85%. And it's funny because, and you have to kind of basically be in that situation where you're like, hey, I can basically accept 80 to 85%. You know, the 95s, those are special, and that's when I'm really in tune to what's going on. But honestly, the thing is that yeah, you just have to basically be good to yourself. Understand that you're not going to be perfect, and it's not about doing that, and it's about reaching the audience anyway.
When you're traveling and as a concert pianist, every time you go to some place, you have a new instrument.
Yes.
Unlike the violinist who travels with their instrument, or the flutist, or the clarinetist, or whatever it might be, what
Yeah.
what challenge does that present to you when you are going and here's a brand new piano and it doesn't play exactly the same as the piano that you just left?
I've played on some really, really terrible pianos, and honestly, sometimes you're kind of sitting up there like, what was this tuner doing, honestly? You're like, what is going on here? What I generally do before I show up to a gig is I want to try out the piano the day before and really listen to it and have a chance to operate it, know how the pedals work. Are the pedals working effectively? And if you have a tuner on site, that's even better. He can sit there and make modifications if something's not voiced correctly. But generally, the day before I'll play on it and rehearse. And I've been actually in situations where I not have been able to do that, and you just basically sit there and you're kind of like, it takes a while for you to warm up, but eventually you're able to kind of delineate, you're playing. It's tricky, but you start to figure it out while you're performing. Okay, I can't play as loud as I play on this piano as opposed to this piano. So you make those adjustments while you're performing. I generally don't like doing that. I don't like to have like curve balls like right when I'm up there in the moment because then you're kind of you're fidgeting with other things. But generally speaking, if you're going to be at a performance and you're going to be performing on a piano that you want to be familiar with it.
Yeah, it's almost like a tennis player going to play a match but not knowing what surface they're going to play on until they get
Oh,
there.
Yeah, it's absolutely the case. And then you're basically sitting there pretty much about 30% of the concert trying to figure out how you're going to regulate it. And by the time you get to the half, after you come out after intermission, you're like, now I got it, but this would have been a lot better if I knew
Yeah.
how to do that
Yeah.
initially.
There's
So
probably a skill that you pick up too, Ian, I guess. And
you
the more
do.
you do it, the more you can adapt more quickly.
You do, and even like if a note sounds terrible, I remember I did play. There was one incident where I did play on a piano, and I did actually get a chance to warm up on it, and it was not. It was a dog of a piano. It was terrible. It was really bad, and I kept hitting a wrong note, and I'm like, you know what? I don't understand that. I practiced this thing well, and I keep hitting the wrong note. What the heck is going on here? Then I look down. The note itself was actually moved over a centimeter. It was busted.
Oh,
And I was
goodness.
like, well, that's why and then you get off a centimeter, you know how that you'll hit a wrong note. So I was like, well, what in the heck am I going to do here? So I think I didn't play that note as loud as everything else, particularly if, and it wasn't a melodic note. So I was pretty lucky. But yeah, you never know what you're going to get when it comes to piano playing.
Yeah. You're working on a project called Letters from the Front. Tell us about it.
So we did I'd say about a year, actually 5 years ago. I met with the general manager of WFMT, Steve Robinson, and Steve knew that I was in the military, and he said, as a concert pianist, it would be really cool if you put together a program of letters that were written by soldiers to their loved ones, and have that put to maybe vocal music, and then do accompanying, and be an accompanist, and you could put some fireworks in your part too, and get a composer to do that. And I think fast forward after 5 years, I did find a composer. It was not, and it was a project we wanted to do. I just didn't get time to it, and we finally got the investment that we needed to put it together. And we found Patrick Zimmerly, and his wife, who's our librettist. And she, right now, currently, she's the director of La Boheme in New York at the Metropolitan Opera. So
Yeah.
she's been around for a while. She's very seasoned. She put together the libretto. We had all these letters. And actually, what WFMT did, the radio station here in Chicago, they did a program called War Letters. And so they already had a list of letters that were really emphatic, very meaningful. And so that's kind of what we said, hey, we'll take what WFMT did. And they didn't have exclusivity to the letters. They didn't have, the full copyright to them. And we got the copyright to all the letters. And we made our own, and we put in more music that we needed to make it coalesce. So that's the project. It's about 16, give or take 16 songs based on actual letters that were written, and it spans from soprano all the way to bass baritone. So we have a tenor and we have a mezzo soprano, and it's wonderful what the composer did with it.
And it goes all the way back to the American Revolution, right? All the way
Yes.
forward to
Yep.
current times.
Yep. Yep. It's actually the ones from the Revolution are actually two brothers writing back and forth to each other.
Uh-huh.
And they're both actually serving in the war, so they're both writing back and forth. And so we had two letters from the Revolutionary War. We do have some from the Civil War. As a matter of fact, I'm going to mess this up. I think it's his great 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 grandfather who served in the Civil War. The gentleman who wrote a book had these beautiful letters, and they're right. He actually wrote a book. I think it's Love and Fowler, if I'm not mistaken. But he writes all these letters are in this book between the soldier who served in a Union soldier who served, and he's going back and forth and writing back and forth to his wife.
Mhm.
It's unbelievable the way that it is. It's kind of he talks about thinking about her at night, and she writes back and says, "I'm depressed." It's very emphatic and very compelling because it's just you never. The wonderful thing about this project is particularly in wartime, these guys go through so much strain and stress, and they don't know if they're going to live the next day. So think about that. They take about 10, 15, 20 minutes they have time to write to their loved ones. And they're thinking, I don't know if I'm going to be able to see this person again. So the thing is that the letter comes out from the heart. It's not something that somebody's really specifically looking at their prose or, how they're writing in the grammar.
Grammarly doesn't come into effect. No.
No, I mean, they're not going to sit there and like, I'm going to write a
Mm.
very
No.
emphatic or, very touching letter. This is just what they feel. And I think that that is what Patrick was really interested in as a composer. It's like, we could really put this together and it will really move an audience. So, and I think that that's our ideal goal.
Is the album arranged chronologically or by some other order?
No, it is not chronological. So you do start with the Revolutionary War letters. There's some in the Civil War. Then we kind of go back to World War II. Then there's one at World War One. But then
Okay.
it fluctuates. The music has continuity,
Uh-huh.
but the thing is yeah, the letters are not in chronological
Yeah.
order.
Fair.
So.
When should we expect it?
So that is going to be released. We're hoping we're going to start recording that in January of next year. We've already got our place set for that for 3 days of just really intense recording, getting that done. We want to have it released before July 4th. I would say probably maybe at the end of June.
Makes
So we
sense.
could
Yep.
celebrate the 2000, the 250th birthday of the United States. So that was how we wanted to do that. And we really wanted it to have, that was actually another thing too. It's like, hey, this is the 250th. We're never going to get that in our lifetime. So it's time to do this recording. That was another thing too. It's like, we got to get this out. So
Yeah, it makes total sense. Do you have an engineer or a team like that you work with
we
consistently?
do,
How does that go?
we do. So the lucky thing that we have so much, David, we have so much great talent. I'm so proud of this project. So Patrick, not only is he a composer, he's also done some engineering. He's done recording. So he's going to be on point with that.
Mhm.
We have Charlie Post, who actually records the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. He's going to be on. So he's going to be working with Patrick. So they're both working together on the recording itself. Ultimately, Patrick is producing. But the thing is that, we got them. I did invite a couple of other folks on that are pianists that are artistic, kind of like coordinators, because when it comes to vocal music and piano, the thing that I'm always concerned about is I don't want to cover up the vocalists and I need somebody to actually listen to the balance. So, and that's why I invited a very good friend of mine, Emery Cooney. So she also has a doctorate in piano performance, and we studied under the same professor. I say, come in here, make sure I'm not covering up the vocalist, please. So, and that's a thing. That's a big thing with pianists too. We have a tendency to want to be the center of attention. So I think that she humbles me in that way. She's like, You're playing too loud." So, you know, so we brought her on too. So
that that sounds good. Are you going to take the album on tour then also?
yeah, and actually we got a couple of we are in the mix with a couple of them. I don't want to mention them now because we haven't signed a contract with them, but
Sure. Okay.
we're in the contract process with two right now, and hopefully we're going to get more. I anticipate since it's the 250th and everybody is just rushing to get stuff out for the 250th, it's going to be pretty difficult because everything's going to kind of get lost in that way, I suppose. But I think what our inclination is that by 2027 this should pick up pretty well, particularly if we're going to particularly we would be celebrating Veterans Day every year.
Right.
Memorial Day and those days would definitely be of interest to have this music performed. So, but we got two right now that are pretty much going to go through. I think one is in August and the other is going to be November of next year around veterans. So probably then I think that they were saying the 9th or the 12th. They had us kind of either one we had to pick one.
Yeah.
So
Sounds great.
yeah,
As you
yeah,
get your dates in place, please let me know. We'll do our best to
absolutely.
help promote that for you. What does a typical practice session look like for you?
When I'm really getting into it, generally about maybe 4 hours a day, no more than five. And honestly, the funny thing about that is that if you have really good focused practice, as you know, as an instrumentalist too, if it's focused and you know what your goals are, you don't have to practice that long. And generally, 4 hours and you're really doing intense practice where you're really listening, there's just no reason to go over that marker, to go over 4 hours. I mean, if you're doing five, you're kind of thinking, over 5 hours? I think I did one point in my life, my whole career, I think I did 6 hours for 2 weeks straight, and I think I literally was about ready to lose my mind. So I was like, I'm never going to do that ever again. And I think my wife was very happy about that too. She's like, yeah, let's not do that again.
That's
So
fair enough.
yeah, and I think I think it was, I had to learn the pictures of the exhibition in a very
Hmm.
short period of time. And I really had to buckle down and do that. But other than that, if you're doing more than 4 hours, you're kind of wondering, what is this guy doing, honestly? So,
Yeah, one of my saxophone idols is Eric Marienthal, and one of the things
mhm.
that he says repeatedly is, "I hope I have it right." After hearing it so many times, it's not what you practice, how you practice.
It's true.
So I
It's
want to
true.
think about, like, when you say, you're really listening. What are
Mhm.
you really listening for typically? And are those the same things that somebody who might be your student, let's say, you would be saying generally to listen for X, Y, and Z? Or is it very
Yes.
case specific to the individual or whatever it is that they're trying to learn?
Well, I guess it ultimately depends. I generally kind of go from a perspective, at least I try, because the thing with piano playing is it's technical and you have to be an artisan and things have to be there and it has to be clean. But then that's kind of in direct contrast to making something musical, right? So sometimes something could sound very technical and it doesn't sound like music at all.
Like a
It
Hanon
sound
exercise or something
Yeah,
like that.
exactly. It doesn't
Yeah.
sound, yeah. And so what I try to do is like, okay, there's a technical problem. I try to think of it musically. What am I trying to convey here? And actually, that answers a lot of questions for me. I'm like, okay, the reason why this is not working technically is because you're not hearing it effectively and it's not sounding like music. It doesn't, you're not understanding it from that perspective. So then when I change something, and then sometimes it's like I have to kind of slow something down, or maybe I need to speed it up, or it needs the melodic line is not coming out, so I can't hear it, and that is something that, I'm looking at if I'm working like we were talking before we started looking at polyrhythms. How do the polyrhythms make sense in context of the music? Is it the polyrhythm that is important, or is it the effect that the polyrhythm is trying to
Mm.
make? So, musically. And then when I look at it in that context, the answers come to me. It's like, okay, I could see what this sounds like. A lot of pianists, I've noticed, they get into this is the big trap too. Even if I'm very intent on listening and I'm doing that over and over and over again, I will always have somebody critique my work. Always. Always. Because the thing is that it's almost kind of like an author writing, right? Even though that author is probably substantially good at writing, then he comes back to it in 2 weeks and he's like, wow, this is not what I wanted to have happen here. This does not make any sense, right? So it's somewhat psychological in a way because we think that we're listening, but sometimes we really aren't, and it's really good to get some good constructive feedback. So even after I'm done with the piece, and this kind of goes into that learning, right? I try to, be humble about my piano playing and understand that, hey, I do need to get some critical feedback. And then once I get the critical feedback, I'm like, yeah, you're right. And even like in a recording studio, right? You play it in a recording studio, you're like, that's not how I conceptualize this thing at all. I have to get the kick back here and see, what do I need to change here? This is not recording well. And this is not what I think I was listening to. Always trying to, yeah, you try to listen, but at the end of the day, you do have to have another set of ears that kind of like really guide you. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've found in my life. Even if you're substantially good at what you do, you have to be humble at what you're doing, or you're not going to I don't think that you'll get better at it. So,
All good advice. What do you think about videoing yourself performing as well?
it's different because so videoing, so kind of talking about that theater aspect, right? And the physicality of the piano playing. I guess you could say I have a tendency to be more showy at the piano, and I really like, and it's not for a sense of like, oh, I'm getting my arms off the piano and I'm coming down at the piano and I'm trying to show. It is kind of like showing off, but honestly, a lot of that actually makes the music sound better. So it's because it's not all about playing the notes. It's also trying to get the affect to the audience. What am I trying to convey here? What is it that the composer what did the 1920s look like? What do I think that concert pianists, and I know that like 1940s, you could see old videos of pianists getting their hands off the keys and coming down, and it's very very panache when they're playing Rachmaninoff, and it because that's how Rachmaninoff played, and he had extra rubatos in his music, and that's the kind of the and the movement of the body comes into play because of that. As a matter of fact, when you start doing it that way, it actually sounds really good on the recording too. So it's trying to find that balance as to, okay, physically, what does this need to look like too? Is this really dramatic? You could pretty much play something extraordinary, very fast on the piano. But if your body's not moving with the music, you're not really seeing it go anywhere. It's not moving, or you're not in relation rhythmically to the audience. It's almost kind of like you're not feeling it. It's metronomic. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely.
Sorry,
You don't want to be a robot playing something. You want to be a
no.
human playing something.
Exactly. And generally the flamboyance, I always say that piano music is kind of like ballet. It's very graceful, and the gracefulness of it kind of comes in when you don't want it to sound like blocky noise. You want it to actually feel like it's elastic. And that's obviously very in contrast to what we are doing, because we're playing on a percussive instrument, right? But we're trying to make it seem like it's elastic.
Makes sense. When you get to 2026 and your Letters from the Front is recorded, do you have a concert tour, not of that, but of other things that you have on your calendar now? What can
Not
we look forward to?
Not particularly. We took some time off from the solo music. I was doing that for a bit, and I think the last one, gosh, it's been a bit since, because we took a lot of time off to get this recording going.
Hmm.
Um, I think I was at the University Club here in Chicago. I performed there, and then after that point, I was like, okay, I got to. I think I did some Rachmaninoff, so performances to showcase the Rachmaninoff recording. I did actually do a performance in Georgia that was on their series for their third season, and then just after that, I was like, okay, I got to stop with the solo stuff and really focus on this piece. So not very much solo stuff going on. I can't. And honestly, it's probably a good thing, because you have to really change gears. And this thing is such a huge project, because we're working on it. It's just basically, it's a very small crew of us. My wife, myself, she's working on, setting up the concerts. And, we have maybe a pack of maybe five other six folks, including the singers. So,
Yep.
and it's a lot to as you know, it's hard to organize all that stuff, and we have to do it. So
Yep.
it's just like I don't have time to, like, do solo material, which is unfortunate, because I definitely would want to sit there and start polishing off my Rachmaninoff concerti, but it's just, that's just where we're at.
Totally
So
makes sense. And if people want to get in touch with you about Letters from the Front or anything else, what's the best way to do that?
sure. So they can go into my website. We just had it revamped. So it's www.iangindes, IANGINDES.com. Almost said net. It's .com.
Okay.
They could also look at www.lettersfromthefront.net. That's our site for the new album coming out next year.
Okay. And then on your website, you have a contact form?
Yes, that is. Yes, I do have a contact.
That'd be the
Yes.
preferred way to do it. All right, Ian. We wish you all the best here. I have to say, every time I listen to your piano playing, I'm inspired to go practice. And it's one of those things where I would say, as I have some other times in different contexts, I could do that 10 hours a day for 10 years. I'd never get as good as you. And that's exactly the way it should be. So congratulations to you and everything. And if there's anything we can do with the Symphonina Foundation to be of help, you just let us know. We're going to listen to some more of your music on the way out here. We wish you all the best.
All right. Thank you, David.